Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today my guest is a fellow young entrepreneur who has an incredible story to share with you guys. His name is Zephan Blaxberg, and Zephan has worked as a videographer with the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, House of Cards, Time Life, and has even done work at the White House. He's also author of the international best-selling book, Life Rescripted, host of the award-winning Year of Purpose podcast, a coach, and so much more. At a young age, Zephan was told he had a learning disability in school, and in his adult life, he was blocked from a promotion at a role working as an Apple genius because he was doing too well and his managers didn't want him to move on. Did he let any of that slow him down, though? The answer is absolutely hell no. So Zephan went on to start his own business, and because he's put in the time and effort to gain mastery over the skills that he is deemed most valuable and the areas where he knows he can deliver the most contribution, his success in such a short time at such a young age is speaking for itself. In today's episode, Zephan's going to discuss why now is your time to screw up big time and how you can use those mistakes that you make to propel you to future success. He'll explain how he graduated in 3.5 years, accomplishing something no one in his program has ever done, releasing a feature-length movie in 1 year with no funding provided to them by their department. Why every professor turned down the movie idea and the bold move he needed to make to convince the last professor in the department to accept their idea for college credits. How being selfish is not only important, but sometimes essential in living the life you know you're meant to. The top 3 lessons he learned working for the top information marketing company in the world. Should you get an MBA as a young professional or not? Why he spent $11,000 on his first mentor when he was making only $30,000 per year, and how to select the right mentor for you, how to determine if starting a business is right for you, and how to calculate what you need to succeed financially if you left your current job, why he wrote the international best-selling book Life Rescripted and his biggest lesson learned from writing a book, and finally, how he used travel hacking to rack up 400,000 sky miles, spending very little cash, and even more. So Zephan has made some wonderful recommendations on different resources that you can check out to start building and growing yourself, and also was kind enough to offer a free download to Overcoming Graduation listeners of his international best-selling book, Life Rescripted. What he asks is that when you go to his site, which is linked in the show notes, that you download the book, listen to it, and if it impacts your life, that you purchase a copy for your friends. He wants to give you the book for free, provide value first, and then if it is something that you deem to be valuable in your life, to share it with your friends and the world. So this book has been a huge success, and I'm sure will give you a lot of value. So I definitely recommend checking that out. I'm going to go pick up my copy very soon. And guys, I am so excited to introduce you to Zephan. He's a fantastic new friend in my life, and I cannot wait to hear the feedback from this episode. So without any further ado, let me introduce you all to Zephan Blaxberg. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today my guest is a new friend in my life who is right along the same path as me in starting off his entrepreneurial journey young and really diving in. Zephan is a new friend who is the host and creator of the Year of Purpose podcast and author of the #1 best-selling book, Life Rescripted. I'm really excited to have Zephan on the show. We recently became friends and have been connecting from time to time, and is just a really exciting new person who shares the same passion that I do for helping people and creating a difference in their lives. So Zephan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here, Brian.
I'm excited to dive into your story. Zephan was nice enough to have me on his podcast, which I'll be sharing very shortly on social media. In fact, when this episode airs, it'll already be live. So Zephan, thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah.
And what I always like to do when I start off my interviews is begin by going back to college graduation or wherever someone graduated from, or essentially the beginning of their story, because for each person it varies. But you did graduate from a standard 4-year university, right?
Yeah, I did it in 3.5 years, so it was a little bit of an abbreviated thing, but yeah, ultimately a 4-year degree.
Okay, well, that's impressive first off, but if you could tell us a little bit about what life looked for you at the end of that 3.5-year period, and what were your thoughts and feelings as you were about to take your first step into the real world?
Yeah, well, if you were to rewind and kind of ask the Zephan that you'd see maybe 6 months prior to graduation, I mean, he would just tell you, as soon as I walk across that stage, I'm getting a one-way plane ticket, I'm moving to California, and that's it. I went to school for film, and I thought I would just kind of find my way into the film industry with no real plan. I just kind of wanted to go out there and hustle for it. And the crazy thing is, none of that happened, and so it really spiraled in a totally different direction, in a very good way. But I think that if you were looking at me back then, I was just dead set on being in the film industry. I was a film major. I was just finishing up a feature film, so that's part of why I graduated in 3.5 years, was because I stayed in the summertime to take classes I was supposed to graduate in 3 years.
Wow.
But I dropped one final class that would have gotten me to graduate a year early, because I was really dedicated to this project of producing a 95-minute long feature film, and it was something that no student had ever accomplished before, let alone over the course of one school year, with $1,000 budget that they got donated from local businesses. So
wow.
It really turned into just this crazy sort of awesome college life story, because most people don't get to say they directed and produced a film by the time they graduate.
That's amazing. And what was the name of it and kind of the premise behind it?
Yeah, so it's called 6 Things I Know About You. We currently don't have it up on the internet. I do have private links, so if people listen and they're like dying to watch it, I don't mind sending it. But it's one of those things now where, I own a video production company now, so it's very hard to have my work out there that's 7 years old, because it certainly doesn't look as good.
Right.
And, it just doesn't really align with the work that I do now. But the premise was that it was all based on a true story. One of my fraternity brothers, I was in Alpha Epsilon Pi, he went home for winter break. His mom actually passed away while he was home on winter break. And as a coping mechanism, he was kind of writing this story out as it was unfolding in front of him.
Wow.
And a couple months go by, and eventually, he had mentioned at some point that he had this story of what happened, and he was like, do you think this could be something? He was a writer and also in this film major sort of program, and wanted to know if it was worth, going anywhere. And I think he was, a freshman, and I was getting ready to graduate, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, we have to do something about this. When you just, you kind of see something pop up in front of you and you don't really know what you're going to do about it, but you have to do something.
Yeah.
That was really just one of those moments. And so over the course of a few weeks, I read it over and over again and tried to figure it out, because it just, the story was really important, and I was all about the message. And ultimately we took it, turned it into a 118-page script. We cast it from the theater department at school. We went around to local businesses asking for money. Even Walmart gave us like $25. We got a stunt motorcycle driver with a Ducati motorcycle off of Craigslist. And he was just like, he didn't even care about getting paid for it, and he drove like an hour to come to us.
Wow.
And he was like, I just want the GoPro footage afterwards of me on my bike. And we were like, sure, dude. Like, we'll give that to you, no problem. And it really was just such a rewarding experience. I mean, I remember buying pizza for my actors out of my own pocket, and they're like crashing on the floor of my apartment over the summer while we're filming, just all day and all night. And I just never in a million years thought that we would be able to pull something off, and neither did anyone else in the department. We actually had to go to every single professor just to get someone to sign off on it to get us course credit. Mm-hmm. And we got to the last person, and I was like, you know what? If I don't accomplish this, you can fail me and I won't graduate, and I'll come back and I'll be forced to take your class again, and you can grow me as much as you want.
Wow. So first off, I love that point, because that just shows the boldness, and when you're committed to something, that you're willing to step outside your comfort zone in a big way, essentially say, I will postpone my graduation if you don't let me do this. But I also like that you said you had to go to every single teacher, because that shows a resilience and a dedication to a cause and something that you knew was bigger than you. So you were willing to really step up in a big way to make a difference for this friend and to tell this story. So that's amazing. And when you were finishing up school, so you've just launched this full feature-length film, you said 6 months prior to graduation, you would have given a different answer. Now that you hit graduation, what did the world look like for you at that point?
It was kind of a different time. I was in a relationship at that point, and so I was kind of, I was in this place where I wasn't making the best decisions for myself where I was in life. I was making decisions for myself being with someone else.
Yep.
And even then it might not have been the best choice, but I ultimately decided to move home. And so right after graduation, moved home a couple days later and just started applying for jobs left and right. I think I sent out well over 100 applications over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And only got about 3 or 4 interviews, and the only one that actually made an offer was a job that was listed on Craigslist, and that wound up being my job.
And what work were you looking for specifically? Was it all in certain areas in film? Was it one specific kind of piece of film, or was it just all across the spectrum?
Anything videography related. So if you kind of go back to before we did that film, I actually spent the previous summer interning with a post-production house that did a lot of work for National Geographic, for Time Life, for Discovery Channel. And so, I kind of experienced that, knew what that was like, and I was looking out for that. But I knew that doesn't open up nearly as much as, a videographer, whether it's for a wedding company, for a marketing company. I really just didn't know what I wanted to shoot yet. I just knew I wanted to be behind the camera or behind a computer editing. So it was kind of up in the air, and it was one of those points in time where I'm like, I need to just apply to everything and just see what comes up. It was like throwing darts at a board to see where it lands.
Mm-hmm. And since you said you were making decisions for yourself with someone else, not just for what was best for you, did that relationship ultimately pan out, or was that something that you ended up letting go of, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I certainly let go of it probably within about 6 months of graduation. So I think a big lesson right there, both for myself and for others, is I think that you really have to look at the time in your life and where you're at, and really make the best decision for you and look a little bit further down the road. Even if you don't know exactly where you want to go, I think you really need to be selfish in that moment, because the truth of the matter is you can make a choice like that and you could totally miss out on a huge opportunity. And as you know, and maybe we'll dive into a little bit later, ultimately I did make a trip out to California, and that was kind of like the first domino tipping over that led to a lot of really amazing things. So I think you just have to be a little bit selfish at that point and look at what's best for you. You're graduating college, you've got the whole world ahead of you, and why are you going to limit yourself just based off of, being in love, so to speak?
Absolutely. And what I think is so interesting is we often attribute being selfish. We say, oh, that person is being so selfish, in a very negative context. But one of the most important things I found is being selfish to protect and care for myself is one of the most, if not the most important thing I can do. Because if I'm not caring for myself, growing myself, and pushing myself out of my comfort zone, then I can't be there fully and love fully and care fully for others around me. A lot of times we think, well, I'm going to sacrifice. It could be a dream, it could be a career, it could be a trip for this person. I firmly believe that if it's the right person, they're going to support you in doing what you know in your heart you're meant to do. So I think that, and I really love that you share that lesson, Zephan, because we're young adults. We're in our mid-20s, or people coming out of school or just in their early 20s, and there can be these thoughts like, well, this person may be the one, and that could be true. For a lot of people, I hope it is if you have a really strong relationship. But keep in mind that a person who truly loves you is going to be willing to support you in your dreams, and you should be willing to do the same. So that first job came off of Craigslist, and what was that first job?
So believe it or not, I really had no clue what I was getting into here. I just saw a listing for, videographer, showed up in a suit, did the whole interview. And I don't think I realized until I was 6 to 9 months into the position what I had actually gone into. It turns out it was the largest information marketing company in the world. They had worked with well over 400,000 business owners across the entire world. The two co-owners, one of them had published somewhere in the range of 20 books. It really blew my mind who they were working with. And I found that they were one of the best resources I could have possibly been given after college, especially leading up to, becoming an entrepreneur. And that was because they taught business owners how to be successful business owners and marketers.
Wow.
I mean, they gave them every tip, tool, resource, strategy under the sun. And this wasn't the kind of snake oil scam that you see online a lot lately. I mean, these were guys who were really hitting it big, and it wasn't just, tricking people into buying nothing. They really were teaching very valuable skill sets. And silly me, I didn't even realize until probably 2 years after I left the job when I started my business.
And that's interesting how messages and lessons can come and circle back in our life later. I know that's happened with me time and time again as I've gotten into my adult life, and I look back on when I told my parents they were wrong or they don't know what they're talking about, and then I'm like, oh yeah, no, they were right again. So what were some of the biggest lessons that you pulled from this company, and things that if someone was interested in starting their own business and taking this entrepreneurial journey, what would be some, maybe the top 3 recommendations you would make based off what you learned from this first work experience?
Yeah, one of the first ones right off the bat was don't ask, don't get. And that comes from Bill Glazer, author of Outrageous Advertising That's Outrageously Successful. Mm-hmm. And really the point in that was that he gave some example a while back about how he would put on a conference every year, and the same guy would, continue to show up to the conference and would go to all the just everything. He'd participate, but he would never buy into a coaching program. He would never buy into anything when he was there. And finally, after, 4 or 5 years of going to this stuff, the owner walks up to him and says, I see you here every year. I'm sure you're getting a lot of good stuff out of this, but why haven't you bought into, working with us? And he says, you never asked me. And it blows my mind that people, I don't want to say that they're not intelligent, but I mean, you sometimes have to tell people what to do. Part of it is that group mentality. If someone passes out in a big crowd, not everyone's going to jump up at once to do something about it. Some of them are going to stand around and wonder what's happening and, assume that somebody else is going to take care of it. And so that big first one was don't ask, don't get. And so, I've really applied that since then. It's not in like a sleazy way, but really pushing and asking for more, Right. If you're going and getting a huge client, so in my case, like a video shoot, if you don't ask them if you could, provide to them another service on top of what you're providing, you'll never know if you could triple or even quadruple what you were going to charge them. Yeah. And so that really plays off into, a lot of other places. Prime example, I was in the car on the way to a video shoot with one of my assistant videographers. He gets an email. They're looking for someone who can work on set for the Netflix series House of Cards. And he turns to me and says, hey man, the dates that they need someone for, I can't do. Do you want me to ask them if you could do it? And I said, screw that. There's a phone number in the signature. Give me the phone number. I'm just going to call them right now because you and 30 other people probably got this email. I call them right now. I mean, you got the email, 60 seconds ago? And sure enough, I got the position and now I get to say that I worked on season 2 of House of Cards. A lot of my work is in 5 or 6 different episodes. And, it's just one of those, not only is it a credibility thing, but it's really boosted my business to be able to say that I did that. And it wouldn't have happened unless I asked for it.
That's amazing, first off. And my girlfriend thanks you because she loves that show. So, and I think that's so critical, or I know it's critical because it's something that, like you said, many people just, you never asked it. You never told me that I should. And it comes down to what do you want and are you willing to go for it and are you willing to work for it? It's amazing. And to your point of how to avoid it being sleazy, one of the best recommendations I can get or I can give that I've received from mentors and books and resources is if you understand your customers' needs and you get to know them really well, you can understand where you can provide them with more value. So in that situation, maybe Zephan is able to do a longer shoot, he's able to do more editing, he's able to do additional services that these guys would kill for and they don't have the skill set to do. And so when he says, hey guys, would you be interested in me doing additional video editing because you said that's something that you really struggle with, they would be excited to pay for that. So instead of it being, let me try and force product or force services down your throat, which can definitely get to that sleazy part. It's the old school car salesman analogy of him trying to sell you a Beamer when you want a Toyota. And avoiding that, getting to know your customer, understanding what their needs are, and if you can't fulfill those needs, passing them to someone who can. So love that one. So that was number one. So don't ask, don't get. What are maybe the other two key messages you got from working with this company?
Yeah, so the second one, without trying to sound like Ty Lopez, is knowledge. If you're not reading books, if you're not taking courses, if you're not investing that time to really master what you're doing, then it's really just a waste. You know, I see so many people go out there and say, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and start a business, and they're not willing to invest in themselves and really put in the elbow grease and the time and the effort that it takes to get the business there. They just see everyone else doing it and think that it just comes so easily and naturally, and it really doesn't. I mean, I've got bookshelves here that are just lined with business and marketing books. Like the last time I read a non-fiction book or a fiction book was probably Harry Potter, you know, when I was in like high school. So I think that it's so important to just surround yourself with knowledge, whether it's books, whether it's courses, whether you're just watching YouTube videos or TED Talks, whatever it is, like you really need to be spending the time to learn whatever it is you're in. And I think, you know, you can go to YouTube for like anything these days, and for anything you can't find there, you can go to a site like Udemy and get a course for, you know, 20, 30 bucks. So I think there's really no excuse anymore to master something. And, you know, college is part of it. I think that I definitely learned a lot in college, but I also think that there are so many different pieces of education that you can get from online without actually needing college. So like, you know, I get it. If you want to become a CPA and you need to know the financial stuff, like, yes, you should go to college. It makes sense. But if I want to learn how to do my taxes on my own, I can go to YouTube.
Right. And there's I think that's so critical too, because we're in an age where if you are willing to put in the time to self-educate, you can learn, like you said, just about anything. Now, of course, there's the people who are going to say, yeah, like a CPA, like other, you know, a doctor, there are certain types of paths that are going to need to follow a more traditional route. But if you're one of those people who graduate school and you're like, I did the wrong thing and this doesn't fit and I'm totally lost, start to look into what you love and really educate yourself. Look at the thought leaders in that industry, dive into their content, read their books, because then you'll see, oh, this thing that I love to do, there's people who are doing it, who are finding great success. And I don't mean just monetary, I mean fulfillment, impacting people's lives. When you take that time to really dive in, and to Zephan's point, there are so many resources out there. Just start committing a little bit of time every day, and all of a sudden you'll have a whole new understanding. And Zephan, I know from you that it isn't just books and resources. You've also invested in mentors and programs. That's correct?
Yeah, so I was actually going to say that's probably number 3 would be a mentor or a coach. But real quick, I just want to add that I've seen so many people get out of their 4-year degree and not know what they want to do and think that going back to grad school and trying something else and getting another $100,000 in debt is like the solution. And then they get out of grad school and then they still have no idea where to go. I'm not saying grad school is a bad thing. I'm just saying you shouldn't see it as the only answer. If you get out of undergrad and you have no clue what you want to do, you certainly need to explore and start questioning things and getting really curious about what it is that really makes you tick.
I'm so glad you said that, because I 100% agree, is when people it's kind of falling into that traditional route without any real idea of where you're going. It's, oh, well, I went to school and I got good grades, and I went to a good college and I got good grades, but nothing's panning out. So I guess I've got to go to school because that's what you're supposed to do, right? I know lots of people who didn't fall into that. They chose an MBA because that was the right step for them. They wanted to learn certain skills. You know, I'm not saying everyone's unconsciously making this decision, but I know a ton of people, like you said, that are graduating with tons more debt. They go to these premium schools, and they still have trouble finding jobs. It's an unfortunate reality that in the market today, MBAs are becoming more and more prevalent. There are schools that are offering them, and I've heard people I know and people I've worked with say that their MBA programs were jokes, that the school was offering it just to make a little extra money. So for me, I'm like, why would you take that time to try and learn something that you're not entirely engaged in when you could, for free online or for a minimal investment compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, learn something that truly excites you and then start gaining valuable skills that you could utilize? So I think that is critical. So, and let's dig into the mentor piece, because that has been one of the biggest aspects that has helped me to accelerate results in my life. So can you talk a bit about, one, how to identify a mentor, and two, how to get one? Because I know for the Overcoming Graduation audience, that's one of the biggest questions, is like, where do I even begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, my mentor, my first mentor in business was actually my former boss. So when she left the company, what happened was the company got sold to an investment firm. Many, if not all of us, were let go, and a lot of us went off on our own and did our own thing. So my supervisor in the company became a social media marketing and business coach, and to which I actually hired her. And I think that, for me, I found her just because I was kind of lucky and was already in that space a little bit. We were teaching a lot of coaches and people how to grow their coaching businesses. It wasn't all that, they had mom and pop stores, they had big corporations, they really had everything. So it wasn't just this like, yeah, we're coaching people to become coaches and then they'll make a lot of money sort of deal. It was not that at all. But I think that you really have to be careful and research the person that you take on. So after I had her for 12 months. I've since worked with, I think, 3 coaches off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. And all 3 of them I've actually interviewed long before we even had a coach and mentor relationship. So I really knew a lot about how they functioned. I did not approach them in like a conference sort of setting. It was very one-on-one. I got the chance to dive into how they got to where they are. And I think that it's so crucial to really do that research, because, anybody can just jump out there now and make a website and make a landing page and say that they're a life coach, but until you find out that they had a just life-changing event or anything happened to them, like, how can they be a life coach, if their life isn't quite in order? Like, a lot of people become life coaches because they have no money and, a bunch of really bad stuff happened to them and they just think it's a good way to make money. And like, why do I want to take advice from someone who isn't really winning at life? I want to take advice from someone who's really crushing it. Yep. So I think one of the first steps is really do your research, interview them, take the time, don't make a decision quickly, ask other people, find real life cases of people that have worked with a mentor. And I'm not talking just the testimonial video on their website. Like, I want you to physically befriend someone who in real life, not on Facebook, can sit down to lunch with you and really talk about how their life has changed as a result of working with someone. Mm-hmm. And then what was the second part of that question? So you've kind of hit on both, but it was, how do you identify a mentor? And then it's, I'm blanking now too. Well, let me add to it real quick. The first mentor that I took on, it was a 12-month program. I spent $11,000 that I didn't have. Wow. I had been working for her father's business. He owned the marketing company, making roughly $30K a year, so I really wasn't making a lot. And I had just left the company, and I worked at the Apple store for about a year, making all of the same. I really, I still lived at home. It wasn't like I even had enough to move out of my parents' house. And I laid $11,000 down on the line, not only because I believed in her and I knew so much about her and I knew that she had a proven track record, but I think that I really noticed that this is the only time in my life where I can make such a purchase and royally screw this up and still come back. So for everyone who's listening in, after graduation is your one time to royally screw up. I'm telling you, this is the best time to make the biggest mistakes, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, whatever mistake you're making, like do it right after college and get it out of the way. Because when you have a wife, when you have kids, when you have, a successful business or maybe a six-figure paying job, you don't have that flexibility to screw up nearly as badly anymore.
That is such a great point, because people feel like, well, I can't take that risk. I can't not work and go travel for a year. That I can't take that risk. And it's like, no, if anything, this might be the best time in the world to do that, to step out of your comfort zone and do something big. When I hired my coach, similar experience where I went to an event and he came recommended from one of the people I respect the most in the world. I saw the people that had recommended him. I watched him on Facebook for a while and saw if he was consistent and kept up. And then we had an interview and we talked about it. So really taking the time. It's like, like any big purchase, it should be considered, but that is to this day the biggest investment I've ever made, and also one of the best investments the best investment I've ever made in my life. So, and Zephan, just real quick, the train went by, and anybody who's familiar with the show knows the train is a character named Donna, and Donna advertises whoever I am interviewing. So Donna would like everyone to know that if you would like to learn more about Zephan and the amazing work he's doing, you can visit yearofpurpose.com or check out the Year of Purpose podcast on iTunes. So just had to get in that plug. Now, so you had this amazing experience, and at that point you didn't really register all the lessons that were sinking in. And since we've only got little more than 15 minutes left, I want to make sure that we dive into the entrepreneurial world. So you said this company essentially was purchased, a lot of people were let go as a result. What did your next steps look like after that?
Yeah, so after I left that company, immediately applied for unemployment, did a little bit of freelancing for about 3 or 4 months until I received an offer from the Apple Store to go work at the Genius Bar fixing iPhones and iPads and all those lovely things. And very quickly realized that the magic of Apple isn't very magical when you have a new person yelling and screaming at you every 10 to 15 minutes. And the truth was, I was in a customer service role, and while I was very good at it, and they I was kind of like the backup they would always call in when someone was really losing it. It's very hard to work for a corporation when all day long you see their product not working or dysfunctioning. It's very hard to back them up as a company and to back up that product. Given I still have an iPhone because I love the iPhone, but I saw so many people kind of get screwed over by the system, whether it was they're 1 day out of warranty and now all of a sudden the phone costs them $400 or whatever, or they dropped their phone in the toilet and now it was just game over because they had a newborn and the photos are gone. Wow. It's just there were so many things that I was seeing in this company, and I'm just like, I could change it all around in 1 day if someone just put me in charge, but that's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I attempted to work my way into a different role within the company, was actually barred from doing it because I was too good at my other role and they wanted to keep me there. And so I basically said, sorry, I'm leaving, and walked out like a year after getting hired. And really didn't look back. I started my business a week later and just dove right in head first.
That it's interesting where what we think, okay, let me get a stable job or a safe job, and I'm doing air quotes as I say that, and we're like, yeah, because it's security and it's money. Now, there are times where that's necessary. There's times where you might be in a rough spot and need to pick up a job. But like you said, you realize like this isn't right. The opportunities to grow are not there. And there's something else calling me. So that really pulled you out. So for all the listeners, really pay attention to what's going on inside of you. And especially in your heart, because your head can rationalize and think you out of what is your intuition trying to say, dude, go this way. But really listen in your heart and say, is this right for me? And if not, it's okay to let go. Like Zephan said earlier, it's all right to make mistakes at this point. It's okay to let go, to really step into who you're meant to be and experience the life that you want to create. So when you started your business, can you tell us a bit about what it looked like and who ended up being your first client? Was it a totally random person? Was it a friend? And what was the work you were doing?
So the first client was actually the person who convinced me to quit my job. It was someone that I met through the old marketing company that I'd worked for. He was good friends with the owner. He lived here locally. And he actually was in the Apple store and witnessed someone just, losing it over top of, something really stupid. And he kind of walks over afterwards and takes a few minutes to talk to me and was like, all right, so what was that all about? And I'm like, you don't understand. That's daily. That's what I deal with. That's my job. And he said, okay, what time do you get off work? I said, I don't know, 5 or 6 o'clock. He said, all right, I'll be back here. We're going to dinner. There's a steakhouse. We worked in a mall, so there's a steakhouse nearby. We're going to go there.
Had you ever met this guy before, or this is a totally random person?
Oh, I had met him before because he was friends with the owner of my old company.
Got it.
So
okay.
I had seen him around a couple times. We had talked a little bit, and he takes me to dinner. Kind of has this long, really just inspiring talk about how he got his start and how he got to be a really successful real estate investor, which is what he does now. And he asks the bartender for a napkin, and he draws this little ladder on it with 10 or 12 steps. And he puts 0 at the bottom and puts 30K at the top, which is what I was making at the time, and starts doing the math and breaking it down. And he's just like, assuming you work 5 days a week and there's 52 weeks in the year, but, let's say you get sick or have a vacation for 2. Essentially, you're working about 250 days out of the year. If you take that $30,000 salary that you had that really wasn't doing you a whole lot of good and divide it by that 250, you only have to make $120 a day to replace this job. And it kind of sunk in, and I'm sitting there because you look at the 30,000, you're just like, I don't know how I can replace that. That's the reason why I'm still here. Mm-hmm. And then you look at that $120, you're like, man, I could go mow a few lawns. I could drive for Uber. There's so many things you could do right now. It's just, there's no excuse anymore. I mean, even my roommate, when he lost his job, he's been driving for Uber for the last 2 months, and he pays rent. He gets by. And so there's no excuse anymore to think that money is the reason why you can't pull this off. And so we had a good long talk, and at the end of the night I said, all right, so, I guess I'm going to go into business for myself, but I don't even know where to find clients. And he said, well, you're looking at your first one. And wow. I'm worried about how I'm going to pay for this steak I just ate, let alone clients. I have no clue how I'm going to get out of here and afford the bill. Wow. And he turned to me too when the bill came, and he said, when you make as much money as I do, then you can take me out and you can pay the bill.
Wow, that's beautiful. So one, it's kind of this divine intervention. This guy just shows up at that time when you happen to be getting chewed out by yet another customer and says, let me have this talk with you. And that was kind of the critical trigger that you said, you know what? There's got to be something better than this. So you started your videography company. And can you tell the listeners about some of the most exciting projects? How long has the company been around now?
So I quit Apple actually the next day after that dinner, and that was in May of 2013.
Okay, great.
So I've been in business for just over 3 years, going into my 4th year now. And I literally started, a week later. So within the first 6 months in business, just through smart networking, getting a website up, getting business cards, doing work for, that first client, and maybe 1 or 2 others that I had been in touch with from the old company, I actually got invited, I think, probably 4 or 5 months in, a videographer here locally took me with him on a shoot at the White House.
Wow.
And that's just where things kind of clicked into place, was like, okay, I got this,
Right.
And within a couple months, I did work for some animation work for AAA that went up inside of the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Flyers venues. Ultimately, they came back and asked us to do a full arena takeover, meaning every LED board and screen inside the arena had my videos playing on it during the games.
Wow.
And, that just really kind of showed me what I was capable of. And I was totally underselling myself at such a low price. But, who cares? I had these really good-looking clients.
Yeah. And of course, and the thing is, I've heard many people recommend to start out ridiculously low just to build your confidence that you can make the sale. And then when you over-deliver, and then you can use those testimonials and the clients' names to say, here's the people I've worked with and here's the results I've delivered. And I think every entrepreneur goes through a cycle of needing to learn about what's appropriate pricing, but then also understanding how valuable what they have is and what people are willing to pay. So you have this videography company, you're getting a lot of success, you're like, you know what, this is working and this is something I can do. How did that evolve into writing the book Life Rescripted?
So when I was working, I was probably just about a year and a half into my business. Just broke off a 2-year relationship that came after the college one. And I was at this place where I was like, I really need to figure out who I am again. And I chose to go on a bit of a spiritual retreat with a group. And one of the biggest things that just kind of came to me while I was on this retreat was, I got to go to California. Mm-hmm. Like I always thought about how, there's got to be something that I'm neglecting, some part of me that's like, pulling at me to do something. And I didn't really know what that was until I was in a space where I could open up and really hear what my body was trying to tell me. And that turned into, as soon as I got back from that trip, I started teaching myself travel hacking, because it's just this whole problem solving thing I do is, okay, I need a one-way plane ticket to California, but I don't have the money. So how do I get to California? Well, there's either one of two ways. I pay for it, or I find a way to get enough rewards points that I don't have to pay for it, or someone else pays for it. But I'd heard of travel hacking a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, cool. How do I do this? Let's Google it. Oh, there's this thing called Reddit, and Reddit's this awesome blog where you can learn tons of stuff. Oh, they actually have a subsection called churning, and it's all about using credit cards to get bonus points so that you can get Sky Miles. And sure enough, within like a month or two, I landed like 400,000 Sky Miles over like multiple credit cards. Hadn't spent really any money doing it, because there's certain strategies and ways to go about doing so. And I booked a one-way ticket to San Francisco, which actually turned into a crazy journey of leaving my hometown of Baltimore in November. And I went from Baltimore to Denver, Colorado, spent a week in Denver, and then I went from Denver to San Francisco for a week, San Francisco to LA for a week, LA to Dallas for a week, and finally, I think I spent like Thanksgiving in Dallas and then went back home the next day. And so I'd been gone for a whole month, a little over a month. And, I walk back in and I'm like, this isn't home anymore. Like, home to me is, whatever couch I lay down on at night. Like, I don't need to have these 4 walls with all my crap in it to be my home. And I also felt that I was throwing my business away. I had put everything on hold, told my friends I'll see you later, and, really just didn't do a whole lot of work. And that was the perception at the time. But when I logged into my email, I realized I had pre-booked somewhere in the range of about $6,000 of video work, and basically said, hey, I'm not going to be home for a little bit. Can we put this, 3 or 4 weeks out? So I had taken deposits for about $6,000 in work, did all that work, over the course of the next like 2.5 weeks, and then was like, you know what, I'm not done. Like, I'm still tired of the work. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I need to go. And I threw my roommate, who's my cousin, into the car on Christmas Eve, and we decided to go on a 9-day, 3,000-mile road trip.
Wow. And so again, just across the country and all the way back to California?
We left Baltimore. We went to Pittsburgh first, which was kind of dumb because on Christmas Day, like, nothing's open in Pittsburgh. And all we wanted was, is it Primanti Brothers that's up there that has the awesome deli sandwiches? Like, all we wanted was to get these sandwiches, right? And they're known for it. Of course, everything's closed. But we went from Pittsburgh all the way out through like Ohio and Indy. Then we curved down all the way through like Nashville, Louisville, Atlanta, all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida, and then back up the East Coast. Spent New Year's Eve in Virginia Beach, and then drove back home to Baltimore on New Year's Day. And that's really where the epiphany happened for the book, for the podcast, for like everything else that has spiraled into my life in such a good way, in such a crazy way over the last, since New Year's Day of 2015.
Love the story, and I also love the travel, because it's one of the things that I am such a huge proponent of. I firmly believed since I was in high school that you can find a way to do it. For you, it was travel hacking. For me, it was finding a job where travel was incorporated, but there's always a way to do it, and then sometimes even combining. Now, since we've got about 4 minutes left, Zephan, I want to make sure we have time to hit the closing questions. I want to be respectful of your time as well. So before we hit the 2 closing questions, what would you say is the biggest thing you learned from writing a book?
I think the biggest thing that I learned was that you shouldn't look at something that seems like it'll never happen in your lifetime as impossible. I think that without being cliche, the words or the letters I am are part of the word impossible. And I think that you've really got to take into consideration that a lot of things were perceived as impossible at one time, right? Like if you went back 200 years and someone just said, I'm going to go land on the moon, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like they probably like hang you and burn you at the stake, right? So I think, and I think it's the 5 minute mile, something like that.
4 minute mile.
It wasn't until someone broke that record that like 100 people the next month did it because they saw it as being possible. So the truth is you just have to remember that you're not going to see a lot of things as being possible in your life until you see someone else do it. But as long as you can really internalize this idea that someone's going to make it possible and why not it be you, that's where you can really start to make the magic happen. So I think that, I looked at the book as well. I grew up with one of those IEP plans in school. I got extra time on my tests. They said I had a learning disability. They said I had all these things. And I just kind of looked at it and said, well, someone else made this possible, right? Like I'm sure someone else out there with some disability worse than mine made it happen. Mm-hmm. And if they haven't, they're going to in the future. So why not be me? And, you don't have to have a disability to actually accomplish something. I think just in general, it's like, either someone else is going to do it or you can do it. And if you want it bad enough and you want to be that person to achieve it, then you might as well make it happen.
Absolutely. Very often we're looking for social proof. We're looking to say, who's done this already? And, well, that's kind of hard. And, well, you're not that guy. You're not that size. You don't have these skills. So, that probably wouldn't work. But for everyone listening, that social proof should be more of a motivator than something that pulls away your energy and enthusiasm. And the other piece on the flip side, as Zephan was talking about, if there's something that isn't out there and that no one has ever done, that is your opportunity to make your unique contribution to the world. Yeah, it's going to be challenging. Yes, there's going to be things you don't expect. But if that's the thing that's really worth it in your heart, that the mark you want to leave on the world, it's so worth putting in the work and struggling through the challenges. Because would you rather struggle through the challenges to do something you hate or struggle through the challenges to create a unique, beautiful impact that is truly and uniquely yours? Awesome, Zephan. So, all right, we've got 2 questions to wrap up, and I'll hit them with you right away. So the first one is, what is the unique benefit or gift that you think millennials bring to the world?
I think it's that we think differently. A lot of people try to blame us for being, stuck up or entitled, or you see the videos out there. It's all over Facebook. Everyone wants to blame the millennials. The truth is we're just misunderstood. We go about doing things differently. We build businesses by putting videos on YouTube and getting 1 million people to watch it because we do something crazy. I think they're just upset that we found a better way of doing things than they had. And I think if you go back in time and actually look at the generations, look at the baby boomers, look at the generation before that, every generation to come next has always looked at their previous generation and said, oh, they're ridiculous, they're outdated, they're not up with the times. Like, it doesn't matter how much technology has advanced. Like, we as people are advancing as every generation happens. And I think that we're just looked at totally differently because we found a way to do stuff that was easier, that was better, that was more efficient, that was faster, that was this or that. It doesn't really matter what we did, but we did it differently. And so I think that our unique talent is that we're looking at life through a different lens.
Yeah, it's something where, of course, the millennial trash talking essentially, and Donna is back again, so but I'm going to give you a chance to promote your stuff in just a moment, so you hang on, Donna. But every generation, like you said, has faced some kind of, well, those kids in their rock music and this and that, and back in my day it wasn't like this, but it's understanding that, one, everyone's faced that. And two, we wouldn't be here without the work that past generations had done. So for me, I always try to keep that in mind, that the past generations have set us up for this beautiful, amazing future, and we're able, not everyone does, but we're able to take advantage of what has been created. So I always try to have a balanced perspective and look at the value that they have brought and the value that the past generations still bring, because things like face-to-face communication and eye contact that are quickly falling off in the younger generations, those guys tend to have down packed, guys and girls. I would say guys generally. So it's something where I think it's important to realize, like, listen, whatever you do, especially if it's big and ambitious, people are going to trash talk. They're going to be haters, especially online. So just know what you're meant to do. Surround yourself with the right people, and all of a sudden, all of the hating just becomes white noise. So awesome, Zephan. And to close out, this is our final question, and I like how I say "our" sometimes. Like, I have this team behind me, and it's literally me and my little stuffed Baymax on my desk. But closing question is, if you could go back and talk to Zephan right when he was graduating college, what advice would you give him, knowing everything you know now?
I would tell him to buy the plane ticket. I mean, that's. I can't say that things would fall over like dominoes in the same pattern that they have, but I can certainly tell you that I wouldn't have regretted it.
I love that, man. And I will say, in spite of not having bought that plane ticket when you did, you have caught up damn quickly and surpassed what I imagine you might have done there, because you've had this fire under you. So the work you're doing is amazing, man, and it's a pleasure to get to know you. So I know, Zephan, that people are going to want to come and get to know more about you. So what resources and links would you like to share with the Overcoming Graduation audience so they can learn more about you?
Yeah, so I know that we mentioned the book quite a bit here, and a lot of you guys tune into podcasts, and something's usually recommended at the end, and there's 100 people that you could go get their free thing in the next week or two that you probably listen to, and the truth is that I don't want you to go buy my book. I actually want you to just go listen to it. It's an audio book. I recorded it myself. You can listen to it in a weekend. It's not going to take up a lot of your time, but I really think that it's going to change your life, and it's going to make a difference for you. I don't get any money off of doing this. It's totally free, and it's at rescripted.life/free. Again, that's rescripted with an ED at the end of it, .life/free. And you get the whole download. You get all the raw files straight from my Google Drive. So this is not something where it's like you're getting only the first chapter sneak peek. Like, you guys get it all. And if that does make a difference for you, I'd love for you to go buy a book on Amazon and give it to someone that means a lot to you, because I'm sure it's going to make a difference in their life too.
I love that process. You're giving the book away for free. And if the book, it's essentially providing value first, and if this book gives you value, then be sure to buy a copy and share for someone else. Now, guys, I know the book is going to deliver an impact for you, so be sure to actually follow up, because far too often, Zephan and I both know this as podcast owners, people will listen, they nod their heads, they go, man, that sounds great, and never take any action. This could be the action you take that is the first domino that falls over and takes you on your California adventure, or whatever adventure that may be. So definitely go check out Zephan's book. That's all going to be linked in the show notes. And I know Zephan has to get going. So guys, that is all for today. Thank you all for listening. And Zephan, thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Yeah, Brian, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be here. And, I appreciate you coming on my podcast as well. And just for everyone tuning in, whether you're in the car, whether you're at home, wherever you're listening to this, all those reviews and ratings on iTunes really help Brian to get the word out there to other people. So take the time, 90 seconds later tonight, write a quick review and just really let him know how much you appreciate this episode.
Dude, you're the man. Thank you so much, man. I want to thank you guys all for listening today. This was a super fun episode to record. Zephan is a guy just like me, a young guy who is ambitious and really wants to make a big impact on the world and share a unique and empowering message. So having him on the show and getting to connect has been just a blast. Now, guys, if this episode was of value to you, it would be an honor for me if you would share it with your friends and following. One of the best things you can do to help get the Overcoming Graduation out to more people is provide ratings and reviews on iTunes, which I've detailed how to do that in the show notes, and to share this out with your friends and the people you know could benefit from this message. If you'd like to learn more about the OCG community, you can visit overcominggraduation.com or check out the Overcoming Graduation community on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. If you'd like to buy a copy of my #1 Amazon best-selling book, The First Step, and support the amazing organization My Team Triumph, you can visit thefirststepgift.com. That's thefirststepgift, all one word, .com, to download your free book bonuses and pick up your copy of the book, The First Step, and 10% of every book donated 10% of every book sold is donated to My Team Triumph. If you'd like to contact me directly for interview recommendations, to provide feedback on the show, or to contact me for speaking engagements, book signings, or just to reach out to me, you can send me an email at brian@overcominggraduation.com. So I want to thank you guys all for listening. Thank you all for being a part of the show. I love you guys, and I'll be talking to you again real soon.